Hi, and welcome to a tutorial on how to create a parametric photo frame in Fusion 360. We're going to make a photo frame that we can 3D print, and we're going to make the design such that we could scale the frame and change a few features of the frame uh, based on the same design. I want to be able to fit a 4x6 photo, an 8x10, or any standard photo in a frame, and I don't want to have to remake the design every time I want a different size of frame. So for example, Sandy here, it's going to change, is going to go into a different frame size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press S on the keyboard and I'm going to go to the Design Shortcuts menu. And I'm going to change parameters. And I've already input some parameters here, so I've got the width and height of the frame. And I set them already as 4 inches by 6 inches. Generally, I wouldn't use imperial measurements, but when I purchase a photo, it comes to an imperial standard. So I match that standard. Otherwise, I'm using metric if I'm not trying to match an imperial standard. Let's say, for example, though, that I had something a little bit bigger. So how about a 200 millimeter wide photo? And maybe we're also going to work with maybe it'll be a square. So we'll do 200 by 200. A bit unusual, but that's fine. Our frame thickness, when I just kind of look at my frame, I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. It'll be a more minimalistic frame. The corner radius here for a minimal frame, I think we'll try it something very small. We'll even go a little bit smaller there. Okay. And then the material thickness itself, this is referencing how deep the frame is. I'll make mine kind of twice the size. There we go. And I'm just looking at my example here, and I noticed that it didn't change size when I wanted it to change size. So I'm going to fix that. There we go. Okay, so now we can see it's kind of more of a shadow box approach now that I've set that up properly. If I change that parameter again, the material thickness, we'll change it to 40. Okay, it's huge. Now the only thing that isn't driven by a parameter here is the actual size of the decal image in CAD, and this is more of an aesthetic piece anyway than it is a design piece. I could set that up for a parameter, but in my case, I'm just going to do it manually so that I can make some aesthetic decisions about how I'd want the photo to look. So now it's a much larger frame, custom to the size that I wanted, including the radius. This is a bit different than if I had just completely scaled the design. I wouldn't have individual control over things like how deep the frame is or what the corner radius looked like. It would all just scale uniformly. So that's what we're trying to accomplish here. Okay, to get started, we're going to make a new sketch in a completely new file. Clicking on the Create Sketch button. I want to create a sketch on the ground plane. I'll actually use the home icon here to go back to the default view, and I'll create it onto the ground plane. From the Create menu, I'm going to use a center rectangle. The reason for this is I'm going to snap and anchor my entire design based on the origin of this sketch. I'm going to place the rectangle without doing any sizes because in this document, I need to add my user parameters again. Pressing S for the quick shortcuts and change parameter. All right. I had actually already entered these for this document, so I'll show what that looks like. The width, height, frame thickness, corner radius, and material thickness. And the defaults are 200, 150, 20, 20, and 6. And all of these we'll use to drive the size of our sketch and our 3D object. If I was to add a new one, I would be adding a user parameter. I would enter the name of my parameter, probably keeping my units as millimeters. For example, and then I would specify the initial dimension of it, maybe 100. Okay. So this test example parameter isn't needed for mine. You can go ahead and copy these parameters into your new design, and then click OK. Back to my center rectangle, I'm going to use the Sketch Dimension tool, and I'm going to change the size of the top line to my width. And this fx tells me it's referencing a parameter. I'll change the side line to be the height. And now I want to create a shape for that, the border, the frame. And I'm going to go inwards in this case. So it's important to remember that these dimensions are the overall outside dimensions of the frame that I'm creating. From the Modify section in the Sketch Tools, the Offset tool, if I click on it and I click on the outside frame, I can see that I can create an inner or outer offset. Here I'm going to use frame thickness. There we go. Looking at the sketch, I've fully defined it. I can't move it, scale it, change the size of it because it's fully defined. And there's nothing else I need to do with this sketch. It's a good idea to keep the sketch to be minimal. I don't need to add anything else to the sketch that isn't needed. I'm going to finish the sketch. Now I'm in my 3D space here, and in my 3D space, I'm going to press E. E is for the solid body extrude tool. And I'm going to click on the frame border. And just by dragging the arrow, I can preview what this is going to look like. In the extrusion distance, here, I'm going to enter the material thickness. Looking at this properties dialog, I tend to look at it like a form. So it's first asking me which type of extrusion I want, and in this case I want a regular extrusion. The profile was which sketch profile or face I was drawing from. The start is whether or not I was starting directly on it. I was. Which direction, for the positive, negative direction, or both. How far I want to go, or if I want to go to something else. By how much, and if there is a taper angle. Finally, the operation is going to be a new body here, because this is a single component design. Okay. So now I've got my photo frame, but a couple things need to happen first for me to finish my details. One thing is I need to add the corner radius here. If I press Q on my keyboard, the press pull tool is kind of a generic tool that will lead me to what I want. So I press Q, and then I'll just select on this corner radius, and I'll automatically get to the fillet tool. Here, this is the inner and outer corner. I can see that my mouse hovered over the line because Fusion was expecting me to utilize this line. I'm going to go around and I'm going to find all 8 of the corners. There and there. Okay. I can preview this a little bit, and Fusion, you can see here, Fusion is telling me that there is certainly a limit to how much I can add a roundedness to all 8 of those corners. Because I'm driving this from a parameter, I'm using the corner radius parameter here. That is also going to appear here where we specify the radius. So I've got all 8 of my edges specified to the corner radius. The other options can be default for now, and I'll hit OK. Okay, so now it's a good idea to test it. You can press S, change parameters. And we can find out if our design is scalable and useful by changing some of the widths and heights, for example. Maybe this is a portrait style 4x6 photo frame. The material, the frame thickness is too much there, so I'll change it to 12 millimeters. It's way too rounded at that size, so I'll decrease the roundedness. And I'll check that the material thickness works. Okay. Now I can enter quite a range of sizes here, probably anything for width and height. But just as we saw in our previous example, the corner radius will be limited by the overall width and height. So I definitely can't do something like 200, for example. And Fusion tells me that there is an error on the fillet feature. It also tells me that here in the design timeline, and it's highlighted red. Anytime you've got something highlighted yellow or red, you really should fix that in your design timeline so that you've got the most powerful and flexible CAD design you can. So I'll change the corner radius back down to something that Fusion can compute at this scale, so maybe 5 millimeters. Okay. Then I'll click OK. This is complete now. I won't be showing the decal step for this design, but we've got a fully scalable and parametric photo frame in Fusion 360. Okay. From here, I challenge you to find a way to edit it so that you can have a different roundedness or a different quarter radius on the inside than the outside. And then you might also think about other ways to make this just a little bit more polished. For example, can the front face or the front edges, can they have a roundedness to them? Is there another feature that you can add to this frame that will help you make it more customizable and scalable? Okay, enjoy.